I think if I would have not said a word the whole weekend, you would have realized a lot of what you realized, because this is what you discovered is what's natural to you. What is your nature? I didn't impose anything on you. I didn't adopt new views and a new religion. But hopefully, what the practice does is it strips away all your misperceptions and helps you to see things in a very simple way as they are. And stripped away of our conceptual overlay, we realize, oh, I'm really quite open. I'm really actually okay right now, aren't I? As I said earlier, when I don't consult my memory. And isn't it interesting when I go to, as my teacher called it, the graveyard of memory, how all of a sudden, I'm miserable. He says you need the past and thoughts to suffer. You don't need anything to be free. He says the boulders of the past rest on your chest and impinge your life and your freedom. But find the origin of all these thoughts. You'll see that they're empty, as you may have seen as those clouds pass through your mind. They don't have any more reality than that. So it's a big key in meditation practice. I think I shared this passage from, I think is John J. Audubon the last time, the Audubon Society. He had this very simple, pithy expression. He says, if there's a difference between the bird and what the field guidebook says, believe the bird. All of our field guidebooks have been telling you that you're above, you're below, you're equal to, you're not okay, you're more than okay, you're better than. Good, better, best is the disease of our misperception of self. And as I tried to communicate during the retreat, all of that comparing mind, any of you have any comparing mind during the course of the retreat? All that comparing mind was the conceptual mind telling a story of someone who doesn't exist. An imaginary version of you that's never quite secure because it's tethered to thoughts. And it's tethered to the past. And it's so to be able to see the difference between what your immediate experience is, unfiltered experience, and that little story, then you can actually begin to laugh at that story. And it's actually tormenting when we don't notice it, and it's a little less tormenting when we do notice it, but still bad news. But then it becomes really interesting to see, oh, that's the comparing mind comparing. Not me, not mine. There really is no above, below, or equal. That's just made up. Right now, in this moment, where's above, below, and equal? If you don't consult your memory. Where are you less than? Where are you more than? My emptiness is bigger than yours. This is the definition of mental illness. Taking these thoughts about ourselves to be self. They're just distortions in many cases. On the other hand, they sometimes approximate reality. Sometimes comparisons are useful. If they provide some kind of inspiration for growth, if we can be inspired by someone who seems to embody certain qualities. But often it gets used to make a case for the prosecution. And in that way, the comparing mind has not helped anyone. And it's kept us in a state of dissatisfaction. And one of the big things that we tend to do is we tend to compare. Oh, I wanted to find this. We tend to compare to impossible ideals. I have a poem that I sometimes read. Many of you have heard this one before. It's called Inner Strength. This is about the comparing mind. If you can start the day without caffeine or stimulants, if you can be cheerful, ignoring aches and pains, if you can resist complaining and boring people with your troubles, if you can eat the same food every day and be grateful for it, some of the ideals that we carry on. If you can understand when loved ones are too busy to give you time, if you can overlook when people take things out on you, when through no fault of yours something goes wrong. If you can take criticism and blame without resentment. If you can face the world without lies and deceit. If you can conquer tension without medical help. If you can relax without alcohol. If you can sleep without the aid of drugs. If you can do all these things, then you are probably the family dog. Now, see, I'm inspired by that list on one hand, but I could torment myself with that, comparing myself to that ideal. And then, when is my life ever enough? When am I ever good enough? I'm always hostage to the future when I finally am going to get it. And that is the definition of postponement. We have to stop waiting. Remember yesterday, what if this is as good as it gets? There's no salvation in time. So when the Buddha, in order to reinforce this point, at least this point of here and now and the value of cultivation of the quality of your being here and now, knowing that you're not going anywhere, but if you really stay here, you really stay conscious and really cultivate wholesome qualities, there will be a transformation that happens in your life. You will, over time, notice that your heart is more relaxed. You cause less suffering to yourself and others. Your mind will be much more at ease. But the only way that ever is fulfilled is by being here right now. Is by beginning in this moment, realizing your enoughness. It's that strange paradise. We're all perfect as we are, and we could all use a little improvement. And that's what we have to accommodate, those two things at the same time. So when the Buddha found his ascetic friends, who he thought were really sincere, who had just a little bit of dust on their eyes, the first thing he said to them is, life, the very definition of life, or of birth, it's the leading cause of stress. It's the leading cause for anyone who is born. It is the leading cause of birth, of sickness, of old age, of dying, as I mentioned yesterday. It is the leading cause of not getting what you want, not wanting what you get. It's the leading cause of loss, grief, separation from the loved. It is the leading cause of all kinds of stresses. There is no one who is immune, no being who is born who is immune to these basic stresses of life called dukkha. Basic things that every single human and non-human being experiences, things that are hard to bear. It is not an aberration. It comes with birth. It's not just you. But we all tend to fall into what one person called the 84th problem. When somebody went to the Buddha and said, I like my wife, I like my kids, but I wish they were all a little different. I like this. How can you help me with my problems? All kinds of problems, he says. And the Buddha says, I can't help you with your problems. And he says, well, if you're a big Buddha, big great teacher, what's the use of all your teaching if you can't help me with my problems, with my wife and my kids and this and that? He says, listen, we all have 83 problems. Some will come, some will go. That's a given. I can't help you with the 83 problems, but I can help you with the 84th problem. He says, well, what's the 84th problem? Is that we think we shouldn't have any problems. How many times a day do we think that if I have problems in my life, something's not right? How many times a day how often do we say, oh yeah, this is one of the kinds of dukkha that everyone faces? Basically talked about three main kinds. The dukkha, which is garden variety, sickness, old age, death, not wanting what you want, not wanting what you get, not getting what you want, loss, separation, sickness, the whole thing, all the stresses, everything you have to go through in your life. Second kind, anicca dukkha, the sorrow that comes with passing and change. The way those grains of sand kept slipping through Edgar Allan Poe's hand. The stress or the suffering that comes with impermanence. It's just not fun, the fact that we can't hold on to anything. And then the third kind was a little more subtle. He called it sankhara dukkha, which is the suffering of conditioning, of conditions, the contingent nature of things, how we're so moved by circumstances outside of our control, and the demand, and we're constantly being impinged upon and affected by everything. On one hand, that's good news. We don't have to take it all so personally. But nevertheless, having to deal with sound pollution, noise pollution, light pollution, everything we have to deal with every day, getting up, washing, cleaning, shopping, and then doing it again and again and again, the Groundhog Day experience of our lives. That's inherently that constant impingement that you can't stop. That's one of the kinds of suffering. Everybody has it. It reminds us that life is not as beautiful it is, as delicious, as sensual as it is. It's not all it's cracked up to be. It's hard. And if it is, you're not alone. That's one of the ways that we keep recreating our personality view, is we think we're the only one. Everyone has a measure of it in their lives. And the higher you go, the harder you fall. This is not to scare anybody, but if you think you've somehow transcended having worldly problems, because you're comfortable, because you have wealth or status, those are all empty. They're wonderful, but they need to be understood in their proper perspective. So the Buddha said that this is what he said. This is what comes with life, he had a prescription for dealing with it. He said, welcome it, open to it. Otherwise, what happens? Your life is an endless running from it. And what has that done for anyone? Running from the way things are. It's kept us in a constant state of postponement, dissatisfaction, hostage to a future that never arrives. So in little ways, you don't have to think, okay, I'm going to open to the whole suffering in my life. It's moment to moment. When it's uncomfortable, we start with whatever way you're uncomfortable. Can I accommodate this for this moment? And then another moment. Another moment. Can I let myself feel the difficulty right now? Oh, this is what difficulty feels like. Instead of, oh, I've got a difficulty, I need to get rid of the difficulty. Not that you would say that. But to be able to say, difficulty is like this. And in fact, isn't it interesting, when difficulty is really embraced, it stops being difficulty. When suffering is embraced in its many forms, it starts transmuting into freedom. No longer have to run. So the Buddha's prescription was welcome this, open to it, And then the fruit of that, I've definitely opened to this. I've really let myself see I've looked into the mouth put my head into the mouth of the demon. I've let myself be fed to the demons, like Milarepa, famous Tibetan yogi. He says what turns those basic stresses into mental suffering is the second noble truth. This is the second thing he shared with his friends. And that second noble truth, that which turns the basic stresses into suffering, is that deeply conditioned pattern, that habit of wanting things to be different than the way they are. That expresses itself as wanting sense pleasures, more, newer, better, good, better, best, wanting to become other than we are, this toppling forward, this entering into the world of becoming, the Buddha called bhava, becoming, where our mind takes birth into that imagined world of the little me who's suffering, who's going to somehow figure it out and then come to a place in time when I don't suffer anymore, when I get rid of it. One of his most famous talks, actually the Song of Realization after his awakening, he says, through many births, every time we're born into that world of trying to get somewhere, be somebody, be different than the way we are, he says, through many births in the wandering on, I ran, seeking but not finding the maker of all that noise. He says, birth again and again is dukkha. It's suffering. To keep entering into that world of that lifetime that I have to live out in order to find relief. Have you ever just had this thought, I have to? It happened to me before I maybe even told the story. 10 o'clock at night, one nice evening, San Francisco, California, 1984, 10 at night, comfortably under my Eddie Bauer down comforter, reading a little Dharma book. And the thought came to me, ice cream. And then the ice cream produced a feeling of pleasure. And this is how innocent that becoming is, that going out in search. Pleasure. I felt the taste buds get ignited. And because it went unnoticed to some degree, that little thought created the feeling of liking, and liking created a little pressure, and that pressure then spawned the fantasy of little me was born in that thought, I want ice cream. And I need to, remember this is just an imaginary version of myself that's being created. I need to put my clothes on. I need to walk down several flights of stairs, get in the car, drive up to 24th Street, Noe Valley district of San Francisco, go to the Double Rainbow ice cream store, literally dragged along like a puppy on a leash. I entered into that little mini incarnation. My whole life pulled into that state of suspended happiness. Couldn't be happy until I got it. Ever be pulled like that? And then there I stood, 10:30 at night, alone in the Double Rainbow ice cream parlor, rain coming down, having got my ice cream, having taken the lick, having had that moment where I felt the relief of having gotten what I want. And then that lifetime ends and the new one begins. The one who is born into self-consciousness, embarrassment. How could I be so pulled into such an empty experience after being in silence and pure contentment, I was literally dragged through this lifetime. And this is, of course, the most innocuous kind, the most mild kind. But we've done it again and again and again. You're probably even right now postponing your well-being until I'm done talking. Hostage in that incarnation, one who's waiting. What we do in our practice doesn't mean you don't always go to the ice cream, that you never go to the ice cream parlor, but you notice that. The prescription was abandon that wanting, abandon that waiting, abandon that hoping, abandon that the cause of suffering, what he called tanha, or craving. How do we abandon it? We don't really get rid of it. We take our attention off of the ice cream parlor and notice that state of wanting. This is the magic of mindful attention. When mindfulness, clear comprehension, mixes with the feeling of craving, several things happen. Craving shows its painful nature, and you may have a pause. Do I want to keep practicing craving? But more importantly, when it meets the light of awareness, because awareness is non-interfering, it doesn't identify with what it's noticing, craving reveals itself as a changing weather pattern. And before you know it, that craving for that ice cream passes away, and you haven't even had to leave the house in order to feel the relief. The relief is now. The relief doesn't have to be at the end of the rainbow, because the end of the rainbow keeps moving, if you've noticed. What's that?
But it never tastes as good as
Never tastes as good as the ice cream? Ice cream is pretty good. But the golden dreams keep moving. So the Buddha said, abandon this. And abandoning it means just don't follow this. Don't follow this. Pay attention to it. And you will know the third noble truth. There's an end to this craving. You can know it for yourself. There's an end to that craving. There's nirvana. There's the cessation of greed, hatred, and ignorance in the mind. And the prescription for that is this must be realized. And if you really stay with that feeling of craving, take your attention off the object, you'll see it pass away. You'll know in real time the cessation of craving, falling away of it, without having to live lifetime after lifetime. He says, birth again and again. Dukkha is birth again and again. O housemaker, you've been seen. You shall not build a house again. Your rafters are broken, the ridgepole destroyed. That tendency to keep creating me, my, I'm above, I'm below, I'm not enough, I'm getting somewhere. To craving cessation, it's come. So the third noble truth, there's an end. We can know it moment by moment. And then last, because we've run out of time, there is a path that can be created out of the fabric of your own life, where you can cultivate the causes of happiness and abandon the causes of suffering. And that path has within it three main parts. And the most relevant part to our daily life, well, there's all the parts are relevant to daily life. But first and foremost, the foundation for being able to even train our mind is to live our lives in a non-harming way, is to practice wise speech, practice wise action, practice wise thought, thoughts of simplicity, renunciation, thoughts of goodwill, practice wise speech, non-harming, harmonious, timely, true. Practice refraining from excessive use of intoxicants that cloud the mind, just reverence for life in general. That lays the foundation for being able to be quiet, to find that natural quiet within. So if you don't have that part of your life pretty cleaned up, I think the way the Buddha put it is like trying to row a boat without untying it from the dock. And as you establish continuously mindfulness to all these different domains of your life, you're training your mind But what really supports that mind training, that life training, is developing the middle part of the eightfold path. Wise effort, wise concentration, wise mindfulness. Learning how to be mindful all day long, hopefully. Realizing that you have this capacity no matter where you go. Maybe you realize that, the seamlessness, as you went through the day. You carry all that with you. You carry mindful attention wherever you go. It's not just on your cushion. It's you. It's natural to us, and we can apply that quality of comprehension to everything we do. Walking down hallways, doing what we do with wherever we go, driving. But sitting time, keeping quiet, keeping still, letting our mind and body come together in harmony, so essential. Keeping our mind and our body in general is essential, but stillness, periodic stillness, every day, putting yourself in the posture of practice again and again. Quickies. Find your breath. Find your body. Feel what's going on in your body. Feel what's going on in your heart. Notice what's going on in your mind. The next day, or several times that day, find your body. Find your breath. Notice what's going on in your body, what's going on in your heart, what's going on in your mind. It takes 2 minutes. Do this all through the day in your workday, but then spend some time, sustained time quiet like we did here. Otherwise, the practice doesn't take root in our life. Do it with company. Nobody can do this alone. You just can't. You who are blessed with a vibrant, growing, blossoming community of people who care about practice, take advantage of the different sitting groups. If you don't live here, find a sitting group in your neighborhood. But Christopher will say something about the local group later on. But practice with others. Train in concentration, train in mindfulness. Do everything that can build your vital energy up. Make wise effort all day long. Not too tight, not too loose. Take care of your bodies. I can't really give a whole talk on wise effort now. And then constantly reflect on and realize the interdependence, the interbeing of everything. And let that be the cause of wise intentions to be loving and to be simple and to practice non-greed, to practice non-hatred, to practice non-ignorance, all those things. We need to remind ourselves. Study the Noble Eightfold Path. That's the same thing 2,600 years ago that the Buddha taught his friends. The Noble Eightfold Path, fourth noble truth. All of this is fulfilled, as he put it, in this fathom-long body. Without this body, you can't know the fact of stress. And without this fathom-long body, you can't notice the way we move from the basic stress to the creation of the world in our mind. You know, whatever we call the world is not the world. The world that we often call the world is just the one that we make up in our mind. That's why he says, in this fathom-long body lies the world. The real world is just this, you, me, together. That's what we know. But it also lies the cause of the world. Our mind generates this imaginary world. And it's a great high functioning to be able to do that. But that's not really the world. But also within this fathom-long body, we can realize the end of the world. The end of the world of our imagination. The end of the world of that imaginary version of ourselves. And there's a path to realize the end of the world. I don't mean the end of the world in some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Nihilistic way. Destructive way. It's the end of the world of suffering that gets created in our mind. There's a path. And that's staying awake, staying mindful. And his prescription for that path was, this must be cultivated or created in your life. And then you have to be able to say, this has been created. And nobody's going to do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. But we can't do it alone. So I think that's all I have to say. I need only about 3 more days with you, 4 more days. But just in keeping with this eightfold path, I just want to share the words of Hafiz. He says, you carry all the ingredients to turn your life into a nightmare. Don't mix them. But he goes on to say, you carry all the ingredients to turn your existence into joy. Mix them, mix them. So thank you so much for your practice and giving me the opportunity to share what I love and remind myself of all the things that I'm, like you, a complete work in progress. And so thank you so much for your generosity, for supporting me and my family, and having lived in this Dharma system for all of these years. It's given me a lot of time to reflect on the fact that I depend on others' generosity for my basic existence, and it's given me a lot of pause about how I use the resources that are given to me. And just know that you will be going to the grocer, you will be going to the airline, you'll be going to your dana exists completely interdependently with so many aspects of the world that you don't even know. And what's that? The ice cream shop. Ice cream shop, exactly. And so I just appreciate being able to be part of that circle of sharing and generosity, and thank you for all your practice, and thank you for your generosity and all that, and thank you, Christopher, for hosting me, and Stephen, and everyone who's volunteered, and I've really loved being with you, and just the only regret I have is that I can't just go on and on and on. It may not be your regret, but it is mine. Anyway, thank you. So let's just have one moment of silence, reflecting as I like to do. It won't be a long meditation. You don't have to change postures either. But as I like to do, and this is also a custom at the end of retreats, is we reflect on the possibility that our time together has brought some fruits, some goodness, some merit, some benefit, some blessings. And we take all those blessings and we gather them together and we share them and radiate them out in all directions to all beings everywhere. Radiating the fruits of our practice in our life and sending those blessings and benefits with a deep wish that all beings, without exception, our near and dear ones, those who are unknown to us, the invisible beings, beings being born, beings dying, all beings, creatures, that the goodness, the benefits of our practice radiate in all directions with a deep wish that all beings can have happiness in their lives and peace, and the causes of happiness and peace increasing, that all beings can be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. All beings can realize the fruits of practice, the sacred happiness that's without sorrow, here and now, not look for it anywhere else. And finally, that all beings can grow in equanimity, serenity, able to meet the inevitable stresses without as much grasping and aversion. And a deep wish that all beings can be liberated and that our life, our work, our practice today and every day be dedicated to the welfare and benefit of all beings. May all beings be touched by our practice. May all beings be free.